We're back again. Smartest Guy in My Head podcast, Workhorse Media Group. Thank you for all the support on the last Black History video. It's Black History Month. Black History Month, man. And I appreciate all the love. Let's keep this going all month. Like, share, subscribe, comment, engage with me, and we'll make something happen. We'll bring Black History Month back. I do have to apologize because I did say that I was going to make a video of my Super Bowl prediction, and I didn't. On the fly, I just changed it. I said we're going to do everything this month about Black history, so I'll pick up sports next month. But I did say the Chiefs were going to win 31-27. Boy, was I wrong. Congrats to the Tampa Bay Bucks. But on to the video. This video is going to be about a court case decision that changed how Black people could be married. Now, I know in court cases in schools, we learn Plessy versus Ferguson, which was separate but equal. You know, you can be segregated. And then we learned about Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, which reversed that decision and said you can't be segregated. But they never teach us other things like Loving versus Virginia. Here's the story. Okay. Richard Loving was a white man. Second time I've done this in a row. I've found a way to involve the white person in Black History Month. But it's important, so stick with me. It's worth it. Richard Loving was a white man. Mildred Loving was a Black woman, and they were together in Virginia in the late 1950s. So one day they find out Mildred is pregnant, and they realize that they want to get married. But they can't get married in the state of Virginia due to what is known as, at the time, the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. Now, let's put a pin in that and let's travel all the way back to 1865. And if you are a history buff or if you know basic U.S. history, in 1865, the Civil War was winding down. The North was winning. The Emancipation Proclamation had already been given by Abraham Lincoln to free the slaves, right? All right, so 1865 rolls around and the Civil War is over. The slaves are free. But you know the history of this country. You know that there were such things known as the Black Codes, which means it was just laws on how they thought Black people should act. And I'll let you go look it up for yourself and read it, but you really weren't free as a Black person. It was just another form of, keeping yourself down. But in 1865, the Republican Party had taken over, and they had worked to get rid of anti-miscegenation laws, which basically banned Black people from kind of interacting with white people. So got rid of that. By the time the Democratic Party took back over in 1894, they reestablished all of that. So from 1894 to 1924, states kind of had the option to keep those laws or get rid of those laws. And there was basically a certain region of this country that kept those laws. 16 states in this particular region. I won't tell you the region, but I'll let you guess. It sounds like mouth. But that region kept the laws, and each state was basically saying that, no, we're not going to allow white people and Black people to be wed together. So that's how we get to Virginia having their own law, 1924 Racial Integrity Act. So let's bounce back to the 1950s, late 1950s. So Richard and Mildred, pregnant, ready to get married. They must have been telling friends and family or whatever that they were going to do this. They warned the Lovings against this, but the Lovings like, you know what? Forget it. We're going to do it anyway. So the Lovings traveled to Washington, D.C., where they could get married legally. They traveled there, got married, stayed 2 weeks, come back to Virginia. Well, almost immediately, the police and the sheriff of their town in Virginia were all over them. So one night, the sheriff broke into the Loving's house in Virginia. And it's not weird enough that they just barged in with like no evidence of anything. They just randomly ran into these folks' house. They ran into the Loving's house in hopes of catching them having sex, because it was also against the law for black people and white people to have sex. What made you make that a law? If you've caught somebody having sex more than one time, I mean, that says more about you. You probably need to, pick better timing to go visit people, or at least learn how to knock on a door. But I digress. So, sheriff rolls in. The Lovings are not having sex, by the way. They're just asleep like people are in the middle of the night. And they startle the Lovings. Lovings wake up, point to the wall where they had their marriage license hanging. And they said, you know what, we are legally married. Got it in Washington, D.C. There it is. Well, sheriff of the town in Virginia said, you know what, that doesn't apply here because we don't allow that. So we're going to take you in for, we're going to arrest you and we're going to take you to jail. And they were quite literally booked for cohabitating as man and wife, for living together. That's why they were taken to jail. So they were taken to jail, went to trial, and basically the judge said, hey, we'll sentence you for a year, but we'll let you go if you promise to leave Virginia and not return for 25 years. So obviously the Loving said, all right, we'll do it. So they packed up, went to Washington, D.C., where they got married. So after a while of living in D.C., they started to get kind of homesick because, their friends and family are in Virginia and they can't travel to Virginia. So Mildred got the ball kind of rolling. She started sending letters to the White House, and to make this short, she eventually got in touch with Robert F. Kennedy, and Robert F. Kennedy got the ball rolling to the Supreme Court, and the Lovings went to trial with the state of Virginia. Press fast forward through all the litigation. It was unanimously decided upon in 1967 that it was no longer legal to tell people that they cannot be married because of the color of their skin. There you go. 1967. Loving versus Virginia overturned the idea or the actual fact that black and white people couldn't get married. Now, if you're interested in looking this up and you go read up on it yourself, Mildred Loving, when she was arrested, she was identified as Indian. But during trial, it was thought to be obvious that she identified as black. She had, I think, Cherokee parents or grandparents. No, she was of descent of some Cherokee or Pacific or African American. It's not really clear, but if you look up something and it tells you that she wasn't African American or, what they would call Negro at the time or black, that's not the point, okay? She was not white. She was quote unquote colored. So this law, what she did, if you find out she's not African American, what she did still applies to black history, because before then, black people couldn't get married to whoever they want despite the color of their skin. After that, they could. So don't go in there and be like, this ain't black history. She ain't even black. That wasn't the point. All right. It's cool. It's interesting. In 1967, my parents had already been born. They were alive. My parents were alive and well in a time where it was, in a good portion of this country, illegal for a black person to marry a white person. That's insane to me. Also, a little tidbit before I get out of here. Did you know the last little bit of legislation from those laws were abolished in Alabama in 2000? In the year 2000, there was still legislation floating around where black people and white people could not get married. But my parents weren't slaves, and I've never been a slave, so racism doesn't exist. I should probably leave it alone, huh? That's all I got. Smartest Guy in My Head podcast, Workhorse Media Group. Like, share, subscribe, comment, engage, share again. Let me know what you think. If you find any interesting things about Black history that, are not commonly known, let me know. Drop it in the comments. We'll discuss. I'm always willing to learn. Stay tuned.